The research vessel Luminous Harmony shook violently as another warning alarm filled the bridge. Captain Silvara pressed her translucent hands against the control panel, her skin flickering with patterns of deep worry. The aquatic alien had spent 20 years in space, but she had never faced anything like this. Hull integrity down to 40%, her engineer Melnvek reported, his voice trembling through the water-filled communication system. Captain, we're losing atmosphere on 3 decks now. Silvara looked at the main display screen. The swirling mass of energy that held them trapped glowed with an angry red light. What should have been a simple research mission had turned into a nightmare. They had come to study the dying star, to take measurements and collect data. Instead, they had awakened something ancient and deadly that lay hidden beneath the star's surface. The weapon, because that's what it clearly was, had activated the moment they arrived. Its gravitational field grabbed their ship like a giant invisible hand, pulling them closer and closer to destruction. Now the Luminous Harmony was caught, unable to break free, unable to escape. How long do we have? Silvara asked quietly. Melnvek didn't answer right away. He checked his instruments twice before speaking. Maybe 3 hours. For if we're lucky. After that, the gravitational stress will tear the ship apart. Around the bridge, the other crew members stopped their work. They all knew what this meant. The nearest Galactic Union rescue fleet was 3 days away. 3 days might as well have been 3 years. Silvara thought of her crew. 17 people. Scientists, engineers, researchers. Good people who had families waiting for them at home. People who trusted her to keep them safe. She had failed them. Send the distress signal, she ordered. All frequencies. Every channel the Union monitors. Captain, Melnvek said gently, no one can reach us in time. I know. Silvara's bioluminescent patterns dimmed with sadness. But perhaps someone will find our signal later. Perhaps they'll learn what happened here. Send it. The distress beacon launched into the darkness of space, broadcasting their position and their desperate situation to anyone who might be listening. The Velkin crew worked quietly, each person lost in their own thoughts about the end that was coming. Silvara closed her 4 eyes and thought about her home world. The deep oceans where she had been born. The bioluminescent forests where she had studied as a young scientist. She would never see them again. What she didn't know was that someone was already listening. Far across the star system, 2 days away at normal speeds, 5 human ships were busy at work. The vessels were old and scarred, covered with patches and repairs from years of hard use. They had been military ships once, back during Earth's colonial wars. Now they were mining vessels, breaking apart asteroids and hauling ore through the empty places where few others bothered to go. On the bridge of the Defiant, Captain Robert Hayes was reviewing the day's work reports when Lieutenant Emma Brooks suddenly sat up straight at her station. Sir, I'm picking up something strange, she said, adjusting her headset. It's a distress signal, but I've never seen this format before. Hayes walked over to her station, his boots loud on the metal floor. He was a tall man with gray hair and a face marked by years in space. Play it. The speakers filled with sound unlike anything they had heard before. It was beautiful in a way, like music mixed with whale song and wind chimes all at once. But underneath the beauty was something else. Urgency, fear, desperation. Can we understand it? Hayes asked. Brooks shook her head. The computer is trying to translate, but the language is completely alien. However, she brought up a screen full of numbers and symbols. Mathematics is universal. I can read the coordinates. And sir, there's a countdown. Whoever sent this is dying. Hayes felt his jaw tighten. He had been in space for 30 years. He had seen plenty of death and disaster. But he had also seen what happened when good people did nothing. How far? He asked. 2 days away, but only if we push the engines past their safety limits. Sir, if we run that hot. I know what it means. Hayes turned to his helmsman. Tom, plot a course. Maximum speed. Sir, protocol says we need Union authorization before. Protocol can wait. Hayes activated the fleet-wide communication channel. All ships, this is Hayes. We just received a distress call. Someone out there is dying and we're the only ones close enough to help. I'm ordering maximum engine burn. If your ship can't handle it, fall back. But I'm going. Hayes out. The Defiant shuddered as its massive engines roared to life, pushing far beyond what they were designed to do. Behind it, 4 more human ships matched the acceleration. In the engine rooms, crews worked frantically to keep the systems from overloading. Chief Engineer David Collins watched his temperature gauges climb into the danger zone and whispered a prayer. Hold together, beautiful. Just a little longer. The 5 human vessels raced through the darkness, moving at speeds that would terrify most alien species. They didn't know who had sent the signal. They didn't know what they would find when they arrived. They only knew that someone needed help and they were the only ones who could answer. On the luminous Harmony, Silvara felt another shudder run through the ship. A support beam failed somewhere below, and the groaning of stressed metal echoed through the corridors. She prepared herself for the end, not knowing that help was already on the way. And she certainly could not have imagined what form that help would take. The luminous Harmony tilted badly to one side, sparks flying from damaged panels all along the bridge. Melnvek worked desperately in the flooded engineering bay, trying to keep critical systems online. His tentacles moved through the water, rerouting power from one failing system to another. "Captain," he called out suddenly, "I'm reading something on the long-range sensors. Multiple ships approaching fast." Silvara felt a flicker of hope. "How long until they arrive?" 6 hours. "But Captain." Melnvek's voice dropped with fear. "Their speed is impossible. No Union ship moves that fast. And their energy readings are aggressive like warships. These aren't rescue vessels." The hope in Silvara's chest turned to ice. Pirates? Out here in the empty regions of space, there were still criminals who attacked disabled ships. The Union had tried to stop them, but in places this far from help, lawlessness still existed. "How many ships?" she asked. 5 contacts. Heavy shields, weapons active. They're flying in attack formation." Silvara made her decision quickly. "All crew to defensive positions. Get whatever weapons we have. If we're going to die, we won't make it easy for them." The Velkin scientists scrambled through their dying ship. They grabbed plasma cutters that might work as weapons. They collected hull sealant that could blind sensors. They set up emergency barriers in the corridors. They were researchers, not soldiers, but fear gave them courage. "Captain," another crew member called out, "they're trying to communicate with us. I can't translate it. Let me hear." The bridge speakers crackled, and then a sound filled the room that made every Velkin instinctively pull back. It was harsh and aggressive, full of sharp sounds and hard edges. It was the voice of a predator species, evolved for hunting and killing. "This is Captain Robert Hayes of the Terran vessel Defiant," the voice said warmly. "We received your distress call. We're here to help. Please respond if you can." But the Velkin translation system failed completely. All they heard was the raw, frightening sound of human speech. "They're sending the same message again," the sensor officer reported. "Multiple times on different frequencies." Silvara's patterns showed fear and determination mixed together. "Don't respond. If they think we're already dead, maybe they'll leave." "Captain, they're not leaving. All 5 ships are surrounding us now." On the Defiant, Robert Hayes frowned at the lack of response. "Anything, Emma?" Lieutenant Brooks shook her head. "Nothing, sir. Either they can't hear us or they don't want to talk." Hayes studied the alien ship on his screen. It was beautiful in a strange way, with smooth curves and glowing patches of light along its hull. It looked nothing like the angular, functional human ships. But it was clearly dying. Atmosphere vented from multiple breaches, electrical discharges sparked across its surface, and the whole structure wobbled in the gravitational field. "Sir," Lieutenant James Foster said from the weapons station, "that energy thing holding them is some kind of ancient weapon. A gravity projector, maybe? That's what has them trapped. Can we pull them free? Not without getting trapped ourselves. The pull is too strong." Hayes thought for a moment. "Prepare boarding teams. Full environmental suits. We don't know what they breathe. And load the mining charges. If we can't pull them out, maybe we can blow that weapon apart." "Sir," Brooks said carefully, "approaching an unknown alien ship with armed troops and explosives isn't exactly proper first contact procedure." Hayes gave her a tired smile. "Lieutenant, we left proper procedure behind when we nearly burned out our engines getting here. We're committed now." On the luminous Harmony, alarms screamed as sensors detected small craft launching from the human ships. 5 boarding craft heading straight for us," the sensor officer reported, her patterns flashing with panic. Silvara broadcast to her crew. "Prepare for hostile boarding. Don't attack first but defend yourselves. May the deep waters protect us all." The Velkin crew positioned themselves near the airlocks, their makeshift weapons ready, their bodies tense with terror. They watched their screens as the alien craft approached with predatory precision. The lead craft attached to their hull with a loud bang that echoed through the entire ship. Then came the cutting torches, bright and hot, slicing through their outer airlock like claws through soft flesh. And then the humans entered. Lieutenant Marcus Webb came through first, and to the Velkin he looked like a monster from their worst nightmares. He stood over 2 meters tall in his armored suit, moving with the smooth confidence of a natural hunter. His helmet's clear faceplate showed features that terrified the Velkin: forward-facing eyes designed for tracking prey, a strong jaw built for powerful bites, and visible fangs when he tried to smile in a friendly way. "Hold your fire," Webb called to his team, though his words meant nothing to the Velkin. He raised his hands slowly, palms forward, hoping they would understand the peaceful gesture. The Velkin saw a towering creature making threatening movements, pulling its lips back to show its teeth. Melnvek raised his plasma cutter with shaking tentacles. Webb's helmet display lit up with warnings. "Team, we have armed contacts ahead. Do not fire. Repeat, do not fire. They're scared." 8 more humans entered behind Webb, all similarly massive, all moving with that same efficient, dangerous grace. They spread out through the corridor, their heads turning with precise tracking movements that every prey species in the galaxy recognized and feared. "Oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere," Specialist Lisa Turner reported. "But it's degrading fast. Maybe 2 hours of breathable air left here. Then we work fast." Webb took 1 step forward and the group of Velkin took 1 step back. He stopped, frustrated. How could he show peaceful intentions when he looked like evolution's perfect killing machine? The answer came in the worst way possible. A deep groan shook the ship's structure, followed by violent shaking. Somewhere toward the back of the ship, metal screamed as a major support failed. "Hull breach," Turner shouted. "Section 7 cascading failure. That bulkhead is going to explode." The Velkin felt it too. Their sensitive bodies detected the pressure changes before their instruments even registered them. One of them pointed desperately toward the back sections, her light patterns flashing urgent warnings. Webb didn't need translation. He understood disaster in any language. "Move. Turner, Jackson, get to that breach. Everyone else, start getting these people to safety." The humans exploded into action with shocking speed. Webb sprinted down the corridor toward the failing section, his armored boots pounding on the deck. Behind him, Turner and 3 other Marines ran with equal speed, their movements coordinated perfectly. They reached Section 7 just as the bulkhead began to buckle inward. Through the emergency window, they could see Velkin crew members trapped on the other side, struggling in water that was rapidly boiling off into space through a crack in the hull. "That bulkhead won't last another minute," Jackson assessed quickly. Webb didn't hesitate. He grabbed the manual override wheel and pulled with brutal human strength. The mechanism ground open, never designed for such force. He stepped through into the breaching section, and his nightmare truly began. The temperature in Section 7 was dropping fast. Webb could see his breath fogging inside his helmet as atmosphere screamed out through the hull crack. The metal walls around him groaned and buckled, and his suit's alarms wailed warnings about radiation levels that would kill most living things in minutes. "Lieutenant, your radiation exposure is critical," Turner shouted from behind him. "I know. Get those survivors out of here." Webb could see 3 Velkin trapped near the back wall, their bodies pressed against the floor as the air rushed past them toward the breach. Turner and Jackson moved quickly, grabbing the aliens and pulling them toward safety. The Velkin struggled at first, terrified of the armored humans, but Turner held them gently despite her strength. The crack in the hull widened another few inches. The shriek of escaping atmosphere rose higher. Through the breach, Webb could see the energy weapon glowing outside, pumping deadly radiation into the ship. "We need a patch," Webb called out. "Anything." "Sir, you need to evacuate now," Jackson responded urgently. "I've got time. Find me something to seal this." Turner's mind raced. Their human repair equipment wouldn't work with the alien technology. Nothing would bond fast enough to stop the breach from spreading. Unless, "Sir, you need to hold that crack closed. Physically. With your hands." Webb understood immediately what she meant. It was insane. It was impossible. But it was also the only option they had. He moved to the breach and placed his armored gloves on either side of the jagged tear. The metal was hot enough that he could feel it through his suit's insulation. His suit's structural supports groaned as he gripped the edges and pulled, trying to force the breach closed through pure strength. The metal resisted. It was designed to withstand the pressure of space, built from alloys that shouldn't bend under human hands. But Webb had spent years working in mining operations, moving equipment that weighed tons, his muscles trained and enhanced for heavy labor. He pulled harder. His arms shook. Sweat poured down his face inside his helmet. The radiation warnings on his display turned from yellow to red to flashing crimson. The Velkin survivors stopped moving toward the exit. They stared at the alien creature holding their ship together with its bare hands. They watched as its armor leaked cooling fluid. They saw radiation warnings flashing across its suit's exterior display. This predator, this terrifying being from some unknown world, was killing itself to save them. Turner and Corporal William Blake arrived with emergency sealant and fusion welders. They worked alongside Webb, moving as fast as their training allowed. Blake's hands were steady despite the chaos around them, applying the sealant while Turner used the welder to fuse the metal. 15 seconds, Turner counted down. 10. 5. The fusion weld completed. The sealant hardened instantly. The breach held. Webb staggered backward, his legs barely holding him up. His suit's medical display showed radiation exposure levels that would put him in a hospital bed for weeks. His hands were burned even through his armored gloves. But the section was secure. "Get those people out," he managed to say, his voice tight with pain. But the Velkin weren't moving toward the exit anymore. They were moving toward him. Silvara emerged from the group of survivors, her bioluminescent patterns shifting to colors Webb couldn't interpret but somehow understood. Gratitude. Respect. Wonder. She reached out slowly with one tentacle and gently touched his armored arm. Webb looked into her 4 alien eyes and something passed between them. Something deeper than language, more basic than words. She had watched him risk his life to save her people. She had seen him hold back the vacuum of space itself with his hands. Whatever he was, whatever frightening form he wore, he was no enemy. "Come on," Webb said softly, knowing she couldn't understand but hoping his tone carried meaning. "Let's get all of you somewhere safe." As the humans carefully led the Velkin toward the boarding craft, another explosion shook the dying ship. The ancient weapon outside was growing stronger, its gravitational field intensifying with every passing minute. On the bridge of the Defiant, Captain Hayes watched his tactical display with growing concern. The weapon was pulling harder now, beginning to drag even the heavy human ships toward its center. "Status on the boarding teams," he called out. "Webb's team has secured 12 survivors so far," Brooks reported. "But sir, the weapon is activating defensive systems. I'm reading automated attack drones launching." Hayes cursed under his breath. Of course an ancient weapon would have defenses. "How many?" "Dozens, sir. Maybe 50 or more. They're small but heavily armed." The drones appeared on the tactical screen like angry insects swarming from a hive. They moved fast, far faster than most Union ships could track. Their weapons systems powered up as they identified the human vessels as threats. "All ships, defensive positions," Hayes ordered calmly. "Protect the luminous harmony and give our people time to evacuate the survivors." The human fleet responded instantly. Point defense guns swiveled into position. Targeting computers locked onto the approaching drones. Across 5 ships, gunners settled into their stations with the calm efficiency of people who had done this before. Corporal Sarah Miller sat at the Defiant's defensive weapons station, her hands moving across the controls with practiced ease. She had been a gunner during the Mars Rebellion, had faced down enemy fighters in combat that lasted for days. These ancient drones were fast, but she had fought faster. "Come on then," she muttered, tracking 3 targets simultaneously. "Let's see what you've got." She fired. The lead drone exploded in a burst of ancient circuitry and metal fragments. The second drone tried to evade, moving in a pattern that would have confused most targeting systems. Miller adjusted her aim by instinct and fired again. Another explosion. The third drone got close enough to fire back. Its energy weapon struck the Defiant's shields, causing them to flare bright blue. But Miller had already calculated its trajectory. Her return fire caught it dead center. All across the human fleet, similar scenes played out. Gunners who had trained for war treated the ancient defenses like target practice. They laughed over the communication channels, calling out their scores, turning a deadly battle into a competition. But not every ship escaped without damage. 3 drones broke through the defensive fire and targeted the Perseverance, the ship positioned closest to the ancient weapon. "Stone, you've got incoming," Hayes called out urgently. Captain Michael Stone's voice came back calm and steady. "I see them. All crew brace for impact." The first energy blast struck the Perseverance's shields dead center. The ship shook violently. Lights flickered across multiple decks. "Shield strength at 40%, Stone's tactical officer reported. Another blast hit. Then another. The shields failed completely, and the next shot struck the hull directly, tearing through armor plating and causing explosive decompression in 2 compartments. "Hull breach on decks 3 and 4, someone called out over the chaos. But Stone kept his ship in position, protecting the luminous harmony behind him. "Emergency teams to the breaches. Keep us between them and that alien ship." Hayes watched helplessly as the Perseverance took hit after hit. The ancient drones seemed focused on it now, recognizing it as the biggest threat. "Michael, fall back," Hayes ordered. "Negative," Stone replied. "We've still got people on that alien ship. We hold position." And they did, even as their ship burned and broke around them. Because that's what humans did. They held the line. Captain Robert Hayes stared at his tactical display, watching the numbers that spelled out their chances of survival. The 5 human ships formed a protective circle around the luminous Harmony, but the ancient weapon's gravitational field was growing stronger by the minute. Even the heavy human vessels were beginning to slide toward the center, pulled by invisible forces. "Talk to me, David," Hayes said over the communication channel to Chief Engineer Collins. "Our engines are already running at 115% of maximum," Collins responded from deep in the engine room, wiping sweat from his face. "We can hold this position for maybe 20 minutes before something breaks. Something important." "Michael, what have you learned about that weapon?" Hayes called to Captain Stone on the damaged Perseverance. "We've mapped its structure," Stone replied, his voice still steady despite his ship's condition. "It's incredibly old, Captain. Pre-Union technology, probably from a civilization that died out millions of years ago. It's drawing power directly from the star through some kind of quantum effect we don't understand. Can we destroy it? Not from out here. It has a defensive field that deflects everything we shoot at it. Then how do we shut it down?" Stone was quiet for a moment. "We'd have to get inside the defensive field to plant explosives. Right next to the weapon itself." Hayes closed his eyes briefly, understanding what that meant. "That close, we might not be able to pull back out." "Yes, sir." "Getting in means getting too close to escape." On the bridge of the Steadfast, Captain Katie Morrison listened to the exchange. "Robert, we can't just leave these people to die." "I'm not planning to," Hayes replied. "I'm just calculating what it's going to cost us." Lieutenant Emma Brooks ran probability calculations on her console. Her face went pale as the results appeared. "Sir, the computer shows a 3.2% chance of success if we try to plant charges while towing the alien vessel at the same time." "So you're saying there's a chance?" Hayes said with a grim smile that his crew had seen before, usually right before he did something crazy. "Sir, 3% isn't. It's not zero, Lieutenant. That's good enough for me." Hayes opened the fleet-wide channel. "All ships, this is Hayes. Here's our situation. We're all caught in this gravity field now. We can run right now and probably all make it out alive. Or we can stay and try to save our new friends, with a 3% chance that any of us survive. I won't order anyone to stay. This is volunteer only. You have 30 seconds to decide." He watched the clock count down. 20 seconds. 10 seconds. 5. 0. "All ships report ready, Captain," Brooks said, her voice thick with emotion. "Nobody's leaving." Hayes felt pride swell in his chest. This was humanity at its best. Too stubborn to quit, too compassionate to abandon others, too crazy to understand the meaning of impossible odds. "All right then," he said. "Michael, take the Perseverance in close and plant those charges. Katie, David, use your towing cables to secure the alien ship. Emma, try to communicate with them somehow. Use lights, numbers, anything. We need them to shut down their engines so we can pull them clear." "And us, sir?" asked Lieutenant Foster. "We're going to get that weapon's attention. If it has any more defenses, we'll make sure they're shooting at us instead of Michael." Deep inside the luminous Harmony, Lieutenant Webb had finally gotten the last group of Velkin to the boarding craft. But when he tried to leave, they blocked his path. "Sir, we have a problem," Webb reported. "The aliens won't evacuate. I think they're trying to keep their ship running, trying to help us somehow." Hayes cursed quietly. These beings didn't understand what the humans were attempting, but they could sense the danger and refused to abandon their vessel. "Webb, make them understand they need to leave that ship." "I'm trying, sir, but..." Webb's transmission cut off as another explosion rocked the alien vessel. On the Perseverance, Captain Stone guided his damaged ship deeper into the gravitational well. Every alarm on his bridge was screaming. The hull groaned like a living thing in pain. In the cargo bay, Sergeant Rachel Green and her team loaded the mining charges, powerful fusion devices normally used to crack asteroids into manageable pieces. "Approaching placement coordinates," Stone announced. "Prepare for deployment." "Sir," his tactical officer warned, "those defense drones are activating again. More of them this time." As if responding to his words, the ancient weapon suddenly released hundreds of smaller attack drones from hidden bays. They emerged like a swarm of mechanical hornets, each one bristling with energy weapons designed by a civilization that had mastered the art of destruction. All ships, defensive positions, Hayes shouted. Give Michael cover. The human fleet opened fire immediately. Point defense systems blazed with light as tracers and energy beams filled the space around them. The drones were fast and deadly, designed to overwhelm enemies with sheer numbers. But they had been built to fight civilizations that valued caution, that calculated acceptable losses, that retreated when outmatched. They weren't built to fight humans. Across the human fleet, gunners fell into the rhythm of combat. They had trained for this their entire careers. Many had fought in real wars, against human enemies that were just as fast and far more cunning than these ancient machines. Sarah Miller tracked 6 drones at once, her hands moving faster than thought. She had survived the Mars Rebellion by being the best at what she did. These drones didn't stand a chance. That's 8, she called out over the communication channel. Anyone else keeping score? 12 here, another gunner responded from the steadfast. Try to keep up, Miller. They laughed even as enemy fire struck their shields. They joked even as their ships shook from impacts. Because humor in the face of death was perhaps the most human thing of all. But humor couldn't save the Perseverance from what came next. A dozen drones focused their fire on Stone's ship simultaneously. The combined assault overwhelmed the already damaged vessel. Shields down, Stone's tactical officer reported. Multiple hull breaches. Engineering reports engine failure imminent. How long do you need, Rachel? Stone asked calmly as if discussing the weather instead of his ship's destruction. In the cargo bay, Sergeant Green pushed the last mining charge into the launch tube. 60 seconds, sir. Stone adjusted his flight path with manual controls, putting his dying ship between the drones and the luminous harmony. Energy weapons tore into his hull. Systems failed across multiple decks. The bridge lights went dark, replaced by emergency red lighting. 30 seconds, Green counted. Another blast struck the engine section. The Perseverance shuddered violently. Somewhere below, crew members were dying as compartments vented into space. Charges away, Green finally reported. The mining explosives launched toward the ancient weapon, tiny specks carrying enough fusion power to split a small moon. All ships get clear, Hayes ordered. Maximum engine burn now. The human vessels fired their engines at full power, fighting against the gravity field. The Steadfast and Resolute had attached towing cables to the luminous harmony, dragging the alien ship with them as they retreated. But the Perseverance, damaged and too deep in the gravity well, struggled to accelerate. We're not going to make minimum safe distance, Stone said calmly, diverting all remaining power to strengthen the tow cables. Get those people out of here, Robert. Michael, don't you dare. Someone has to stay close enough to manually trigger the charges if the automatic sequence fails. My ship's already half dead anyway. Make it count. The mining charges detonated in perfect sequence, each explosion feeding into the next, creating a cascade of fusion reactions. The combined blast struck the ancient weapon at multiple critical points simultaneously. The gravitational field flickered, wavered, then collapsed completely. The luminous harmony and its escort ships suddenly lurched forward as the invisible grip released them. They tumbled through space, engines screaming to regain control. But the Perseverance remained behind, caught in the blast wave, too close to the collapsing weapon. Stone fought his controls as debris and energy discharges battered his ship from all sides. Engines responding, his helmsman Lieutenant Richard Park shouted. We've got partial thrust. The Perseverance clawed its way out of the chaos, its hull glowing red from heat and radiation. Behind it, the ancient weapon finally died, breaking apart into millions of fragments after eons of waiting in the dark. 20 minutes later, 6 vessels drifted in the safety of open space. All damaged. All still functional. All alive. The Galactic Union Council chamber was a marvel of engineering and diplomacy. The massive spherical room could hold representatives from 200 different species, each in their own special environmental pod designed for their unique biology. Some breathed oxygen, others methane. Some lived in water, others in pure vacuum. But today, despite their vast differences, they were all absolutely silent. They watched Captain Silvara's testimony on the central holographic display. The Velkin captain stood before them, her bioluminescent patterns carefully controlled to show respect and authority. Behind her, damaged footage from the luminous harmony played on a loop. The council members watched armored figures enter the dying ship. They watched a human hold a hull breach closed with his bare hands while radiation alarms screamed. They watched Captain Stone deliberately take enemy fire to protect strangers. They watched a plan with 3% odds somehow succeed because a handful of beings refused to accept failure. Honored Council, Silvara addressed the assembly, her voice translated into dozens of languages simultaneously. 3 weeks ago, my crew sent what we believed would be our final message to the universe. The Galactic Union fleet was too far away. We had accepted our deaths with dignity. Her patterns shifted, showing emotions that transcended species differences, gratitude, wonder, and something close to reverence. These humans heard our call. They came at speeds that should have destroyed their ships. They boarded our vessel without knowing if we were hostile. They risked radiation poisoning, explosion, and gravitational collapse to save 17 people they had never met, from a species they had never seen, for no other reason than because we needed help. She paused, letting her words settle over the council like snow. They come from a death world. They laugh at danger. They hold bulkheads closed with their bodies. They never abandon anyone who needs help. They are terrifying, honored council. They are also the only reason my crew still lives and breathes. The council erupted into discussion. Hundreds of voices and dozens of frequencies created a storm of debate. Councillor Telnvik of the Morvian Consensus raised a crystalline appendage for attention. With deep respect for Captain Silvara's experience, the Morvian began, their voice like wind chimes. This council must consider the wider implications. These humans are clearly militaristic and aggressive. They possess technology beyond their development level. They show reckless disregard for safety. By every standard measurement, they are dangerous. They saved my people, Silvara protested, her patterns flashing with anger. They saved your people this time, Councillor Brennick of the Toral Federation interrupted. But what happens when they decide differently? What happens when their obvious military strength is turned toward conquest instead of rescue? What happens when they use their weapons against us instead of for us? The debate continued for hours. The council split into factions. Some wanted humanity quarantined to their home system as a dangerous anomaly. Others wanted cautious contact under strict monitoring. A smaller group advocated for immediate integration into the Union. Finally, High Councillor Prenshaw, an ancient being whose species had helped found the Union itself millions of years ago, called for silence with a gesture that every species recognized. Bring in the human captain, Prenshaw commanded. The chamber's environmental systems worked to create an atmosphere suitable for human life. Then the massive doors opened and Captain Robert Hayes entered alone. He wore a dress uniform that had seen better days, patched and worn but clean and respectful. He walked to the center of the chamber, surrounded by hundreds of alien species, some beautiful beyond description, some bizarre beyond imagination, some that defied human comprehension entirely. Hayes showed no fear. Only calm professionalism earned from decades in the black. Captain Hayes, High Councillor Prenshaw addressed him, their voice ancient and patient. This council has reviewed the events at Kelver 9. We have questions. I'll answer what I can, Councillor, Hayes replied simply. Why did you risk your fleet and crew for beings you had never encountered? Hayes seemed genuinely confused by the question. They sent a distress call, Councillor. Someone needed help. What else would we do? But you violated numerous protocols. You pushed your vessels past all safety limits. You entered a dangerous situation with minimal information and significant risk. By any rational calculation, you should have waited for proper authorization and support. Counselor, by the time proper authorization arrived, those 17 people would have been dead. I had ships that could reach them and time was running out. Hayes shrugged, a distinctly human gesture. There wasn't anything else to think about. The council chamber buzzed with translated discussions. The concept seemed alien to many species, taking extreme risk for strangers without calculating benefit or political advantage. Councillor Telnvik spoke again. Captain, you must understand our concern. Your species shows characteristics of predatory evolution. Your technology, though primitive, is clearly designed for warfare. Your personnel demonstrate disturbing tolerance for risk and violence. How can this union trust that you will not become a threat to galactic peace? Hayes was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. Counselor, yes, we come from a dangerous world. Yes, we have fought wars, too many of them, mostly against ourselves. Yes, we build weapons and know how to use them. But we also know what it feels like to need help and have nobody answer. He looked around the chamber, meeting alien eyes across dozens of species. Earth went through a period we call the collapse. Climate disasters, resource wars, nuclear exchange. We nearly destroyed ourselves completely. We survived because some people chose to help instead of harm, to build instead of destroy, to take risks instead of hide in safety. Hayes's voice grew stronger. We're not perfect, counselor. We're probably going to make mistakes. We'll probably do things that confuse or frighten you. But when someone sends a distress call, when someone needs help, we're going to answer. Every single time. That's not a threat. That's a promise. The chamber fell silent. Then Captain Silvara's holographic projection spoke up. Honored Council, I cannot predict what humanity will become in the future. But I can testify to what they are right now. They are the reason 17 researchers will return to their families. They are the reason my species' accumulated knowledge was not lost forever. Judge them however you wish, but I would trust them with my life again without hesitation. High Counselor Prenshaw regarded Hayes with eyes that had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. Captain Hayes, would your species accept membership in the Galactic Union under probationary status? To allow observation and gradual integration into our community? I'd need to take that question to Earth's government, Counselor. I'm just a mining captain. But if you're asking my personal opinion? Hayes allowed himself a small smile. We would be deeply honored. Prenshaw made a gesture that might have been a nod. Then let it be recorded. Humanity is hereby granted probationary membership in the Galactic Union, with the designation of Deathworlder Auxiliary. They shall be called upon for rescue operations and defensive actions where their unique capabilities may prove valuable. 3 months later, Captain Hayes received his first official Union mission. Another impossible rescue situation. Another species trapped and dying in the dark corners of space. Hayes looked at the distress call displayed on his screen and smiled. Looks like we've got a reputation to maintain now. Helm set course. Maximum burn. The human fleet accelerated toward danger once again, because that's what Deathworlders did. They answered the call. Every time.